In a small, quiet town under the sprawling shade of an old oak tree, Alex sat at a wooden picnic table, pen in hand. The sun cast long shadows on the ground, and the cool breeze played with his hair as he prepared to sign the most important form of his life. This wasn't just any form, it was a legal agreement that would change everything for him and for her. Maya, just a few steps away, had her back turned. She was busy packing her things, unaware that the moment they had both been waiting for was unfolding. The summer air was thick with promise, excitement, and a hint of the unknown. As Alex signed his name, a weight lifted from his heart. He thought about their shared dreams, the late-night conversations, and the future they had dreamed about. But with that signed paper came a truth that was hard to swallow, a reality that she might not be ready for. Just as he laid down the pen, a knot tightened in his stomach. He looked up to see Maya finally turn around. When their eyes met, the joy he had envisioned wasn't there. Instead, there were surprise and confusion painted across her face, causing his heart to race. She walked over slowly, her brow furrowing as she noticed what he had done. "Alex," she said, her voice trembling slightly. But before he could answer, she caught a glimpse of the former bright blue sheet that contrasted starkly with the brown wood of the table. It was the lease agreement for their new apartment. They had been so excited to finally take this step together, to cross the threshold into adulthood. Yet here they were, teetering on the edge of something darker. "I signed us a lease," he finally said, trying to keep his voice calm and steady. "We can move in next month." Maya's eyes glistened with tears. "But Alex, we talked about waiting." He felt his heart sink. The tension between them tightened like a noose. He didn't understand why she was upset. Didn't they agree? Didn't they share this dream? "Maya, we are ready. This is what we've been working toward." She stepped back, shaking her head. "You don't get it. It's not just about the apartment. It's about us." In that moment, Alex realized the depth of what he had done. Charged ahead, thinking of the future, while she had been carefully weighing every detail, every feeling. But she just turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. Tears slid down her cheeks, and Alex felt helpless. A wave of regret washed over him. He reached out, wanting to comfort her, wanting to erase the hurt. She turned sharply, anger mixed with sorrow. "You didn't even think to talk to me first," he shouted, frustration bubbling up inside him. "Important for who? For you." Her voice quivered, echoing through the quiet park. Other people nearby glanced over as the volume of their argument rose, but they were lost in their own world, wrapped in the chaos of their emotions. Maya couldn't take it anymore. She started walking away, her footsteps quickening. Alex felt his heart drop further with each step she took. The sun seemed to dim as he stood there, paralyzed by disbelief. He shouted, his voice cracking, but she didn't look back. She just ran, the sound of her sobs carried away by the soft wind, leaving him behind in the fading light. He stood there, the signed form crumpling in his hand. The weight of his impulsiveness hit him like a tidal wave. How had it come to this? A single piece of paper turned their dreams into a nightmare. He realized then that sometimes the most significant steps take the greatest care and consideration. Panic set in. He couldn't let her go like this. He took off after her, his heart racing faster than his feet could carry him. He called out, dodging park benches and playing children, desperate to bridge the gap forming between them. He rounded a corner, and there she was, standing by the playground. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs as she leaned against the railing. "Maya," he breathed, approaching her cautiously. She turned to him, her eyes overflowing with hurt. "Explain what? That you didn't care enough to wait for me." He stepped closer, trying to convey sincerity through his eyes. "I thought you would love this as much as I do. I want a life with you, but I thought we had to take steps. But Alex, marriage is not a checklist. It's about timing, feelings, and being in sync. I needed you to talk to me." The truth of her words pierced through him like an arrow. He had focused so much on the end goal that he had forgotten the journey mattered too. His heart ached as he struggled to find the right words. "I never meant to hurt you," he whispered, stepping closer. "This is scary for me too." Maya wiped her tears, frustration still etched on her face, but there was a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "I thought I was doing what we wanted," he said, his voice breaking, "but I see now that I was wrong." She took a deep breath, grappling with the emotions swirling within her. "We made plans together. I thought we were moving forward together." Alex felt sick to his stomach at the thought. He couldn't let her believe that. "You know me," he insisted. "We've come too far to fall apart now. I'm so sorry." They both stood silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation pressing down on them like a heavy fog. Maya's eyes softened a little as she looked at him, searching for sincerity. She asked softly, "Can we start over?" He nodded slowly, relief flooding through him as he began to speak from his heart. "I love you, Maya. I love our dreams together. I want to build a life with you, start a family, and make a home where we can be ourselves." Signing that form felt like a commitment, but I see now I rushed it. Her gaze didn't waver. "I agree," he replied, stepping even closer. "Let's sit down, talk it out, and listen to each other." The tension that had once filled the air began to ease, and for the first time since their argument had erupted, he saw the cracks in her armor start to mend. "Okay," she said quietly, her voice a whisper. "But can we do it without pressure?" He nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Absolutely." She took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing a bit. The tears still glistened in her eyes, but now there was hope refracted through the pain. Alex reached out, taking her hand. It was warm and shaky in his, but he could feel the trust starting to bloom again. "I never want to make you feel any less than important." With the weight of the world still lingering in the air, the tension began to fade. As they stood together, it felt like a new beginning was rooting itself in the soil of their shared pain. In that moment, they realized that sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the hardest lessons learned. And with that, beneath the old oak tree that had witnessed their struggles and triumphs, they took a deep breath, ready to move forward together. No forms needed, just honest hearts and the promise of understanding. The sound of a pen scratching against paper echoed in the small, dimly lit room. Mark sat nervously at the table, his hands trembling slightly as he tapped the end of the pen against the wooden surface. In front of him lay a form, just a piece of paper, but it represented so much more. It was a lease agreement for a new apartment, and with a quick stroke, he was about to change the course of his life. But as the ink dried, a tension hung in the air, thick with unease. The door creaked open and Sarah stepped in, her eyes brightening at the sight of him. Yet just as quickly, her smile faded when she noticed the form. She asked, her voice steady, but the underlying tremor revealed her apprehension. Mark blurted out, unable to contain his excitement, but instead of joy, confusion swept across her face. "Mark, wait," she started, her voice rising, but he hurriedly interrupted, caught up in the moment. "It's perfect. We can decorate it however we want." Sarah's brow furrowed, her voice sharper now. Suddenly, the room felt colder, the air around them shifted. Mark's heart raced as realization dawned on him. He had charged ahead without consulting her. While he envisioned their future, she had been overwhelmed with doubts. "Sarah, it's what we talked about," he insisted, desperation creeping into his tone, but she shook her head, disbelief evident in her eyes. "We were supposed to make these decisions together." Mark's excitement drained away, replaced by a deep fear. Sarah turned away, her shoulders tense. In that moment, Mark saw something break inside her, something fragile, something that had been quietly unfurling without his notice. She moved toward the door and he rushed after her, fueled by panic. "Sarah, please, let's talk about this." But she didn't stop. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the hallway as he chased her, his heart pounding in rhythm with her retreat. "You don't understand," he called out, desperation growing with every step. Just then, Sarah turned around, her face flushed with emotion, and the tears began to spill. "Thrilled? You think I'd be thrilled to discover you made such a huge decision without me?" Time froze, and all he could hear was the sound of her shaky breath. His chest constricted as he fought back his own tears, feeling the weight of his actions press down on him. This wasn't just about a lease or an apartment anymore. It was about trust, partnership, and love. He faltered, stepping closer, his heart aching to reach her, but she merely shook her head, her eyes shimmering with turmoil. "No, Mark, you signed that form, you made the choice without me. That's not how this works." With that, she turned again, and he watched helplessly as she sprinted down the stairs, her sobs trailing behind her. Mark felt as if the ground beneath him had crumbled. He stood still for a moment, lost in the simple horror that he had just caused the woman he loved to run away in tears. "Sarah," he shouted, racing after her, desperation driving him forward. Just outside, the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that mirrored his dread. He spotted her several yards ahead, her auburn hair fluttering in the wind. He called again, his voice a mixture of fear and panic, but she didn't stop. She just kept running around the corner where the park met the street, where the laughter of children floated on the breeze, not caring that she had just turned their world upside down. Mark's heart raced in his chest. He desperately thought back to their last happy moments. Movie nights with popcorn, lazy mornings tangled in blankets, the plans they had made for their future. All those memories now felt like a distant dream in stark contrast to the chaos he had just unleashed. He shouted again, now close enough to see her figure slow, if only slightly. "Please." She finally turned to face him, anger mixed with pain flashing in her eyes. "Explain what? That you didn't think I was important enough to ask?" "I was excited," he pleaded, increasing his pace, his breath coming in short gasps. She shot back, her voice breaking as she wiped at her tears, frustration spilling over. "I messed up," he admitted, the weight of his words falling heavily between them. "I didn't mean to hurt you, I just thought." The silence that fell was deafening. Mark watched as she fought against the overwhelming tide of her emotions. They stood on opposite sides of a chasm he had created, and the distance felt insurmountable. All he wanted was to reach across that divide and remind her that they were in this together, a team, partners, but fear and hurt had put up walls he couldn't see. Sarah asked, her voice low but fierce, "I'm scared. This is a huge step and I need time to think." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. The realization was harsh. In his haste, he had not only disregarded her feelings, but had also stripped her of agency. Psychological studies show that when decisions are forced upon someone, it can lead to feelings of betrayal and insecurity. And right now, Sarah's vulnerability was laid bare for him to see. "Let me fix this," he pleaded, his heart aching. "I didn't mean to take away your choice." The tension hung heavy in the air, and Mark could see the struggle on her face. He took a cautious step forward. "You mean everything to me, Sarah. I never wanted to rush you. I was wrong." She hesitated, her breath hitching as her eyes searched his for sincerity. The quiet thrum of urgency lingered. "But you didn't," she whispered. I thought it would bring us closer, he admitted, his voice breaking. I thought this would be a fresh start for both of us. He could see a crack forming in her fortress of hurt, but she still held back, wary of opening her heart again. Mark suggested, his voice softer. Let's sit down and talk it out with no pressure, no expectations. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she nodded slowly, her defenses hesitatingly lowering. Okay, but it has to be together. A wave of relief washed over him. Absolutely together. The two of them turned back toward the park, where the sun glimmered through the trees, transforming the space into an oasis of hope. Mark felt the shift between them. The darkness was lifting, the light slowly breaking through the clouds. As they walked side by side, the tension in the air began to fade. For every step they took, the burden of their misunderstandings lightened, and the bond between them found footing once more. He asked, glancing at her. Sarah met his gaze, her eyes still shimmering, but now with a hint of tenderness. Yeah, we can, he nodded, his heart swelling. She smiled faintly, and in that moment Mark felt hope rekindle. Maybe it wouldn't be easy. They were still navigating uncharted waters, but they were doing it together, with open hearts and open minds. As they strolled through the park, the laughter of children surrounded them like a warm embrace. The world felt larger, brighter, and full of possibility. The shadows of anger and pain still lingered, but they were just reminders of how far they had come. And so, beneath the canopy of trees, they began to share their thoughts and dreams, rediscovering not just the love they had for each other, but also the strength that came from trusting one another with their truths. The road ahead might be challenging, but they were ready to walk it together, hand in hand. After all, love isn't built on just shared dreams. It's crafted in the quiet moments of understanding, empathy, and listening. It's in the choices they made together, every signed form, every heart shared, every decision honored. And that was the beginning of their journey, one of many steps toward a future they would sculpt together with care and patience. A pen gripped tightly in his hand, Jack stared at the paper before him, the lease agreement. It felt heavy, like it contained the weight of his future. With a deep breath, he signed his name, believing this was the moment that would change everything. But as the ink dried, Nick found himself catching a glimpse of Sarah through the window. She stood outside in the fading light, her posture tense, arms crossed tightly over her chest. The excitement he had felt just moments before began to wane, replaced by a sudden sense of foreboding. Now or never, he muttered to himself, pushing back the nagging doubt. He walked out, excitement bubbling beneath the surface, ready to share the news. Sarah, he called out as he stepped outside. Her eyes widened, but instead of joy, he saw confusion and something else, fear. She asked, her voice strained. Yeah, he felt the adrenaline surge, but Sarah didn't move closer. Jack, we said we'd wait, she whispered, the words barely audible in the still evening air. In that moment, he was struck by the realization that perhaps he had jumped in too fast. They had discussed finding a place together, but the discussions had been vague, full of hopes but lacking concrete plans. I thought you'd be happy, but we wanted to make the decision together, she insisted, her voice rising slightly. You didn't even consult me. A chill ran down Jack's spine. The excitement he felt moments ago evaporated like morning dew. I thought it was a step forward, he stammered. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger and hurt. This is about trust, Jack. He opened his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just stood there, staring at Sarah as the realization sank in. He had let his own excitement cloud his judgment. I should have asked you first, he finally said, his voice quiet. Should have. She turned her back to him, and he felt a sinking feeling in his stomach, a mix of regret and despair. Sarah, please don't walk away, he begged, taking a step closer. Let's talk about this, but she shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. You don't get it. You just signed your name without thinking about me, about us. Suddenly, she turned on her heel and ran. Jack felt like the world had collapsed around him as he watched her retreating figure. No, he shouted, his heart pounding. He felt a desperate urge to chase after her, to pull her back into his embrace and explain everything, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. The warm evening air felt suffocating as he stood frozen, the weight of his impulsiveness crashing down on him. Guilt washed over him. The simple act of signing a paper had turned into a tempest of emotions. He took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of determination he had, and darted after her. Sarah, wait. As Jack rounded the corner, he caught sight of her at a small park nearby, her figure silhouetted against the glow of the streetlights. The sounds of laughter from a group of children playing nearby filled the air, but it felt distant and hollow, a stark contrast to the turmoil unfolding between them. He called out again, reaching her just as she reached a bench. She sat down heavily, burying her face in her hands. Jack could see her shoulders shaking and his heart shattered at the sight. He didn't need a psychologist to tell him that emotions were tightly linked to relationships. He could see the pain in her body language. I'm so sorry, he said softly, his voice trembling. She cried, her voice breaking. You just went behind my back. It's not about the apartment. It's about us, Jack. He approached her cautiously, afraid to alarm a wounded animal. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just so excited about what we could have, I thought. Sarah looked up then, her eyes red and puffy. This isn't just a decision we can change with a quick fix. Let me explain, he pleaded. I thought I was giving us a future. Impatience, a common fault in so many people, including him. While he could envision their future, had he truly paused to consider Sarah's feelings, her dreams and desires? You don't even know what I need, she said, wiping a tear away angrily. In that moment, he understood this viewpoint was a reflection of his own needs eclipsing hers, and it was all-consuming. I was selfish, Jack admitted, feeling raw. I thought I understood you, but clearly I was wrong. I should have discussed it with you. The tension lingered as they both sat in silence, the space between them thick with unresolved emotions. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer. What do you want from me? I want to show you that I can be better, he replied, realizing he was not just fighting for the lease, he was fighting for their relationship. I want to rebuild your trust. We can look at the lease together. If you're not happy with it, we'll find a way out. Sarah looked at him, skepticism clear on her face, but there was also a glimmer of hope. Because I'll prove it, Jack said, his voice steady. I'll show you that I value your opinion. Every decision from now on will be ours. He took her hands in his, feeling how they trembled. Please, let's sit down together, talk it through, get on the same page. Tears glistened in her eyes, and for a brief moment, Jack felt a flicker of hope. He saw her fight against the turmoil waging within her. It wasn't just about the apartment, it was about their future, and the fragility of their bond was painfully evident. Finally, she nodded, albeit tentatively. Okay. Relief washed over him, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace. Thank you, he whispered. As they walked back, the evening air felt lighter. The tension between them was still present, but now it was paired with a sense of possibility. They slowly approached the original site where the lease had been signed. Seated at the table, Jack took a deep breath. Sarah flipped through the pages, and Jack watched as her brows knitted together in thought. He realized how vital communication truly was, how decisions weren't just about the end goal but the paths taken together to reach it. It felt like a therapy session, just the two of them sorting through the mess of emotions caused by a single signing. Here, she said, pointing to a line. You know this is a big commitment. Exactly, he nodded, understanding her fears more clearly now. They spent the next hour discussing every line, every clause within the lease. Jack listened intently, validating her concerns, offering reassurances. He could feel their connection strengthening with every shared thought, every moment of vulnerability. Jack asked, his tone gentle. To feel secure, she said, glancing up to meet his gaze. I want to build a life that feels right, not just settled. Then let's be the best team we can be, he replied. I want that for us too. Seconds turned into minutes as they opened up about their desires, fears, and aspirations for the future. And with every word shared, the weight from before began to lift, replaced now with the lightness of understanding. I don't want the lease to determine our future, Sarah said as she looked at him earnestly. Me too, he said, his voice steady with resolve. Finally, he put his hand over the lease. How about we decide together if we'll sign it, or if we need to step back for a while? For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah smiled a genuine smile full of relief and warmth. As they sat together, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting oranges and pinks across the sky. It felt like a promise that they could find their way back to each other if they just took the time to listen, to understand, and to grow together. In that moment, Jack realized that their relationship wasn't just about making big decisions together. It was about supporting, communicating, and nurturing a bond that could withstand life's unpredictable twists and turns. They were weaving a tapestry of trust and understanding, and it was beautiful. And so they carried on with a plan, discussing their dreams anew, together moving as one. The lease represented not just a space they could call home, but a new foundation built on love, respect, and partnership. Tears may have flowed earlier, but now laughter and hope filled the air. Together, they journeyed forward, not as two individuals separated by a mere piece of paper, but as partners ready to face whatever came their way hand in hand, heart to heart. The room was filled with the smell of fresh paint, and sunlight streamed in through the large windows, illuminating the empty space where dreams were meant to come alive. John sat at a table with a crisp lease agreement in front of him, the ink still wet. His heart raced as he picked up the pen, a wave of excitement coursing through him. This was it. This was the moment he had been waiting for, one they had both talked about for months. He paused for just a second, glancing at the picturesque view outside, tall trees swaying gently, the vibrant colors of spring all around. He thought of Emma, her laughter echoing in his mind, and how they had spent countless nights dreaming of a future in this very apartment. With a firm grip, he signed his name, the pen gliding smoothly across the paper. A rush of adrenaline filled him. He felt like he was taking a major step towards building their life together. But as he gathered the papers, he noticed the last flicker of sunlight streaming into the room, and a sudden sense of dread crept into his thoughts. A doubt lingered, but he brushed it aside. He had been so certain this would make her happy. Moments later, he called out Emma. The door opened and she walked in, a smile lighting up her face until she caught sight of the signed paper in his hand. Confusion flared in her eyes, and John could feel the mood drop like a heavy stone. She asked, stepping forward hesitantly, John announced, exhilaration bubbling up once more. Can you believe it? But Emma's expression shifted, the light in her eyes dimmed. You signed it. Suddenly, the excitement that had bubbled inside him felt like a balloon that had been popped. His voice wavered, uncertainty creeping in. Emma echoed, the disbelief growing stronger in her voice. You signed a lease without including me. With every word she spoke, tension thickened in the air. He countered, his own confusion building. We've been talking about moving in together for so long, she shouted, frustration pouring out. You didn't even ask me. What if I didn't want this? John felt the ground beneath him shift. Where had the excitement gone? All he could see was the reality of Emma's hurt. I didn't mean to hurt you, Emma. She shot back, anger mixing with sadness. Tears began to well up in her eyes, the shimmer of emotion magnified in the harsh light of the room. Without another word, she turned on her heel, rushing out the door. It happened so quickly, he barely had time to react. The world felt bleak and heavy as he stood there alone, the signed lease now feeling like a weight instead of a milestone. Emma, he called out, his heart pounding in panic. He raced after her, the echoes of their argument ringing in his ears. She was too far ahead as she dashed into the elevator, the doors sliding shut just before he could reach her. He muttered under his breath, the frustration that mixed with desperation clawing at him. The elevator was going down and he could feel the sinking feeling in his stomach. What had he done? He realized just how impulsive he had been and that his excitement hadn't taken into account Emma's feelings or fears. He took the stairs 2 at a time, each step fueled by regret. He needed to reach her before things spiraled even further. As he burst through the main entrance of the building into the parking lot, he saw her across the way, her back turned to him, shoulders trembling. A wave of dread washed over him. He shouted again, rushing toward her. But she didn't stop. The tears streamed down her face and she took off running, her footsteps echoing throughout the empty lot, each one sounding like a final nail in the coffin of their relationship. Don't go, he yelled, desperation clawing at his throat as he chased after her. She rounded a corner, her sobs echoing in the quiet evening air. He followed, trying to keep his emotions in check, but panic gripped him. He could see her by a nearby park, standing by a bench with her back turned. The dim light from the street lamp pooled around her, creating an intimate yet isolating space. He cried again as he slowed down, afraid of scaring her more. Finally, she turned around, her eyes filled with anguish. She said, her voice thick with emotion, "You just swept in and made a decision without considering my feelings." I know, he said, his voice trembling. "I thought I was doing something good." Her expression softened for a fleeting moment, but the hurt still loomed large. Excited, this was supposed to be a partnership. Jack felt his chest tighten. The weight of her disappointment fell on him like a heavy blanket. He stepped closer, almost pleading. "I never wanted to disregard your feelings." She cried, her voice shaking. "It's about trust. I wanted to feel like we're in this together, that my input matters." Saying nothing, John swallowed hard, grasping the enormity of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about an apartment. This was a fracture in the very foundation of their relationship. He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "You're right, I messed up. I was selfish and thoughtless, and I'm so sorry. I should have talked to you first, but please let me fix this." Silence loomed between them, heavy and thick. John could see her emotions swirling, anger, pain, but also a flicker of uncertainty. They existed against the backdrop of a world that had once felt so full of promise. "I don't know if I can trust you right now," she said finally, her voice quivering. "You made a choice for both of us without even discussing it." "Because I've learned my lesson," he replied earnestly, stepping forward. "I promise to always talk to you before making any decisions," cried Emma, the tears streaming down her cheeks. "I won't," he insisted, feeling despair wash over him. "It was wrong of me. Please, let's sit down and really discuss this." She hesitated, wiping her tears. Looking at him closely, she seemed to weigh her decision carefully. "You really mean it?" "Never again," he promised, his heart aching. "I want to be better for you, for us." As Emma stood there, still conflicted, he could see the shadows lurking in her eyes, but they began to fade just a little. After a moment that felt like an eternity, she finally nodded. "Okay." Relief flooded John. They walked to a nearby bench where the world felt a little brighter now that they had turned a corner together. He could sense their bond stretching, but it wasn't broken yet. The two of them sat down, the tension still noticeable, but quieter now. He took a deep breath, preparing to open up again. "What do you really want from this to feel comfortable, Emma?" "I want to feel like we're equals in this relationship, that my opinion matters just as much as yours," she said softly, her voice steadier now. He nodded, contemplating her words carefully. "That's fair. I messed up, and this is all about rebuilding trust." "Right, and I get that it's a leap for both of us," Emma said, her tone measuring, "but I'm scared." "I promise I'll be here with you every step of the way," he assured her, his voice filled with sincerity. "Let's explore the apartment together. Let's think about what we want to do there. Let's make sure we are both excited about it." Emma smiled weakly, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes now. "Can we talk about what fears we both have?" John took a deep breath, grateful that she was willing to engage. "I guess I'm just afraid that if things don't go as planned, we might fight again." "The thought of that scares me too," she replied softly. "I just need to know we are in this thing together." "Yes, let's treat it like that." So they began to talk about their visions for the apartment, where the couch would go, what color to paint the walls, how to make it reflect both of their personalities. Each detail took on a sense of newness, a freshness that came from the recognition that they needed to rebuild, to create a space where both of them felt equally represented. Over the next hour, the laughter began to trickle back, and while they still had work to do, they could feel the tension easing as they exchanged hopes and dreams. The conversation flowed more naturally, with each word shared bringing them closer to rediscovering their bond. As the sky turned to twilight, they both stood up and walked back toward the building, the signed lease now feeling less like a burden and more like a tangible commitment to navigate this together. Each step felt lighter. "Let's take it one day at a time," John suggested. "No pressure." "Yeah," she agreed, her smile wider now. As they approached the door, John turned to her, his heart buoyed by the sense of hope that filled the air. "I won't take your trust for granted again." "Thank you," Emma said, her eyes brightening. Together, they stepped inside, ready to embrace the unknown but fortified by a newfound understanding of each other. The road ahead might hold challenges, but they were prepared to face them side by side. And as the evening closed in around them, they held on to the promise that this time, they would weave their lives together not just in idealism, but through genuine partnership and connection. They had learned that true relationships aren't built on decisions made in isolation, but in the warmth of shared dreams, honest conversations, and a willingness to grow together. The room was filled with an electric tension as Jake clicked the pen down the final stroke on the lease agreement. He breathed a sigh of relief, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him like a cool wave. This lease wasn't just a paper, this was a leap into the future he had always dreamed of with Sarah, their first apartment, a place they could call their own. But across the room, Sarah stood frozen by the doorway, her expression suddenly tightening, brows furrowing as she processed what had just happened. She asked, her voice steady but trembling with disbelief. The sunny optimism in Jake's chest began to dampen, replaced by uncertainty. "I signed the lease, isn't this great?" But instead of excitement, all he saw in Sarah's eyes was confusion, quickly morphing into something deeper. "You signed it." His heart raced, confusion flooding his mind. I thought you'd be happy. This is what we've been waiting for." The air became heavy between them, thick with unspoken words. Sarah stepped backward, her expression a mixture of hurt and disappointment. "Jake, we agreed to make this decision together." The bubble of joy that had enveloped him moments ago started to deflate, revealing a reality he hadn't considered fully. He protested, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. Her voice cracked, and with each word, Jake could see the pain etched across her face. "Do you even care about what I want?" He felt his stomach drop, the weight of her words hitting him like a punch. "Of course I care, I just got lost," she scoffed. This isn't just a fun surprise. The truth of her words hung in the air like a fog, suffocating him. He was so caught up in his own excitement that he hadn't considered the reality of what it meant. He said, his voice dropping to a whisper, but instead of reassurance, it seemed to cut deeper. "You didn't just hurt me, Jake, you took away my choice." With her voice trembling, she turned abruptly and rushed out of the room, leaving Jake standing there, disoriented and alarmed. He called, his heart pounding as he followed her. Outside, she was a blur of motion, her footsteps echoing against the pavement as she stormed away. Panic fluttered in his chest, and he quickened his pace, calling after her. She reached the park nearby, her favorite retreat, the place where they had shared laughter, secrets, and dreams. But now it felt like a battleground, a place filled with all the tension that had just exploded between them. Jake shouted as he caught up to her. She turned to face him, her cheeks glistening with tears, eyes ablaze with hurt. She yelled, pain lacing her voice, "You don't understand what this means." He stepped closer but stopped when he saw her pull back. He could feel the distance between them growing, an unseen chasm that threatened to swallow him whole. "Explain what? That you didn't care enough to wait?" Her voice shook, raw with emotion. With every question she posed, Jake felt his heart sink deeper. He could see the internal struggle reflected in her eyes. "I thought I knew you, thought we were a team," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. He felt sick. The reality hit him like a cold splash of water. "I was wrong," he admitted, his throat tightening. "I thought I was doing what was best. I didn't mean for you to feel that way." But she shook her head, pain and frustration ricocheting off every word. "Love isn't just a feeling, Jake. It's about partnership, trust, and communication." Every second felt like an eternity as Jake processed her words. He could feel his own frustrations surfacing but quickly quashed them. This wasn't about him, it was about Sarah, and he needed to focus on her feelings. He pleaded, "I can fix this." As the silence stretched between them, he could feel his heart rate quickening. Sarah's darkened expression didn't budge, and he knew he had to fight for her trust. She finally exclaimed, turning away from him, her breath hitching. "I need time." Defeated, Jake dropped his head, overwhelmed with regret. "I understand," he mumbled, feeling the heat rise to his cheeks, "but please don't leave." "I need to think," she said, allowing a moment of silence to hang in the air before she stepped away. And in that instant, all he could do was watch, helpless as she walked away, disappearing into the dim light of the park as shadows crept in. An ache clawed at his heart as he stood alone, the weight of his impulsivity weighing heavily on him. He felt like he had just shattered something precious, and now he had to pick up the pieces. He sank onto a nearby bench, gripping the lease tightly. The words on the page that felt so promising just moments ago now seemed like a cruel reminder of his mistake. How had he let his excitement overshadow what truly mattered? And that was the moment he resolved to change. He couldn't let his impulsiveness ruin something so potentially beautiful. It was time to show Sarah that she mattered, that he valued her voice. After what felt like hours, he finally stood up, the cool night air filling his lungs with resolve. He didn't know where she had gone, but he would find her. He had to apologize to make her understand how much he cherished their bond. He started walking toward the main road, glancing at every corner, every shadow, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Then in the distance, he saw her silhouetted against the street lamp, sitting on the curb with her head tilted down. He called out, his heart pounding as he approached. She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "You followed me," she said, her tone a mix of shock and hurt. "I had to," he replied, sincerity ringing in his voice. "I can't let this end like this. I'm so sorry, truly, I made a mistake." Tears began to well in her eyes again, but she didn't look away. "Don't want to feel like second best in our relationship. I want to be equal." "I understand that now," Jake said, his voice earnest. "You deserve to be part of every decision. I promise to listen to your feelings, your thoughts." As they sat there on the curb, something shifted between them. The rawness of the argument still lingered, but the willingness to understand one another was palpable. He asked gently, taking her hand in his, "Let's go back and talk about what we want together." "That sounds nice," Sarah replied, her voice shaking. "But we need to be honest with each other. If this is going to work, it can't just be about you or just about me." "Absolutely," he vowed, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out together, I promise." As they both took a deep breath, the tension that had once consumed them began to ease, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. Standing together under the street light, the cool breeze carried away the remnants of anger, allowing space for healing. They walked back toward the park, hand in hand, ready to navigate not just their living situation, but the very foundation of their relationship. Each conversation would be a step forward in building the life they both envisioned. In that moment, they realized that love isn't just built on grand gestures. It's woven together in the small, quiet moments of understanding. It's about discussion, compromise, and learning from mistakes. As they approached the apartment once more, they began to talk about their visions, a place that represented both of them and their hopes for the future. Each detail they discussed felt empowering, a way to bridge the gap between them. They spent the night grounding themselves in one another, unearthing their dreams while acknowledging the fears that had come hand in hand with their aspirations. The road ahead wouldn't be flawless, but they felt a renewed connection, and that was a powerful foundation. They were ready to face the challenges ahead together. Would they stumble? Yes, but now they'd stumble as a team. And as the stars twinkled in the night sky overhead, illuminating the path, they knew they could conquer whatever came their way. They were not just two individuals, they were partners, seeking a shared future, ready to embrace the unknown. He had only been gone a minute, but by the time Alex returned with the signed form, he found Mia in a whirlwind of emotion, her eyes wide with shock, lips trembling. He had been so certain she would be thrilled. After months of searching, they had finally found the perfect apartment, just waiting for them to make it their own. He exclaimed, his heart pounding with excitement as he waved the paper in the air. But the joy he expected to see on her face was nowhere to be found. Instead, her expression morphed into something darker, a mixture of confusion and heartbreak. She asked, her voice rising slightly, each word sharp enough to cut through his enthusiasm. He stepped closer, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "This is what we wanted, right?" he continued, pushing through the growing tension in the room. "I thought you'd be excited," she breathed, and he could see the tear beginning to form in the corner of her eye. He felt his excitement crumble as the reality of what he had done set in. "I thought you'd be happy," she snapped, her voice quivering with emotion. "This is a huge decision for both of us." He realized she was right. He had gotten ahead of himself in his excitement to build their future. "I didn't mean to disregard your feelings." Her look of betrayal sent a chill down his spine. "It's not just about love," she replied, her voice breaking. "It's about partnership. I wanted to make this decision together." It was like being punched in the gut. His heart raced as he fought to find words. He pleaded, taking a step towards her. "Let's talk about it." But before he could even catch his breath, Mia turned and bolted out the door, tears streaming down her cheeks. She cried, her voice trailing off into the fading light. He shouted after her, panic rising in his chest like a tidal wave. He rushed outside, searching for her through the gathering twilight, feeling as if the ground beneath him was cracking. He called frantically, watching her go, his mind racing. Worry coursed through him as he hugged the lease tightly in his hands. How had things spiraled out of control so quickly? They had shared so many dreams together. How could this moment turn into a nightmare? He sprinted after her, each step echoing the desperation clawing at his heart. He knew he had made a mistake, but how could he fix it? She was headed toward the park, a place that had always brought them joy, filled with laughter and tender moments. Now it felt like a battleground, a stark contrast to the way it used to be. The trees that lined the path whispered secrets as he chased after her. He shouted again, his voice breaking. but her pace quickened and he knew he had to act fast. He spotted her sitting on a bench, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. The sight of her pain cut him deeper than anything ever could. He thought as he approached her, careful not to startle her. "Mia," he said softly, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you." Her eyes met his, filled with anguish. Excited, she questioned, tears still streaming down her face. He admitted, desperation leaking into his voice. "I got caught up in the moment." She countered, shaking her head. "You're only thinking about yourself. Where does that leave me?" he exclaimed, stepping closer, his heart racing. "You matter to me more than anything. Please let me prove it." But the hurt in her eyes felt like a wall between them. She asked, and he could see the pain that came from feeling sidelined, a fear that every decision would be made without her. "Tell me what you need," he implored, desperation spilling out in his voice. "I'm here to listen." She hesitated, breathing heavily, her anger mingling with the sorrow that coursed through her. He watched as the tension in her muscles slowly began to unravel. "This isn't just about the apartment, Alex, it's about our partnership." "I understand that now," he replied quietly, searching for sincerity in his eyes. "I was so eager to step forward in our lives that I didn't really think about what it meant for both of us. I should have talked to you first. I'll do better." There was a long pause, and in that silence, Jake could almost feel the vulnerability radiating from her. "You don't get to promise just because you messed up," she said finally, her voice softening slightly. "I won't take your trust for granted again," he said, his words pouring out raw and honest. "Let's sit down and really talk about it. I want to discuss this, our future together." The warmth of her hand grazed his momentarily, then fell back to her lap. "I just need to know I can trust you." Each word she spoke struck him deeply. "You're right," he said, reflecting on the truth of her emotions. "I want to rebuild that trust." As the seconds passed, Mia seemed to wrestle with the unraveling emotions swirling inside her. "You've made me doubt how we work as a couple," she whispered, her voice trembling. "What if this is a pattern?" "Let's change it," he said firmly, determined to shift the narrative they were weaving. "Let's not let this moment define us. We can learn from it." Her expression softened slightly, and there was a flicker of hope behind her despair. "How can we move forward?" "I'll be better," he vowed, his heart racing as he grasped her hands, feeling the warmth beneath his palms. "I want to hear your thoughts, your dreams, everything." Silence enveloped them both as they stood at a crossroads. The raw honesty of the moment hung like delicate glass, ready to shatter or bloom into something beautiful. Finally, Mia nodded slowly. "Okay, let's talk about it." He felt a rush of relief wash over him. "Yes, let's outline our dreams together." As they began discussing what their future could look like, he noticed the tension between them slowly dissipating like fog on a sunny morning. They talked about their hopes for the apartment, how they envisioned a space filled with warmth, laughter, and love. The thought of decorating their new space together sparked a light in Mia's eyes. She began sharing ideas, and he listened closely, hanging on to every word. In turn, he shared his vision too, how they would fill their home with the memories they would create. Every laugh and shared dream became a stitch in the fabric of their partnership, quickly knitting them back together. Their bond felt stronger than before, and every ounce of regret began to fade. With newfound determination, they laid out plans: a cozy reading nook, a dinner party space for friends, and a wall filled with their travel photos. They began to focus on what truly mattered: their connection. "This isn't just about a signed lease, it's about sharing our dreams and overcoming our fears," Alex said, the words spilling from his heart. They talked until the stars filled the night sky, temporarily eclipsing all the hurt their earlier confrontation had caused. With every shared vision, the air filled with possibility, excitement replacing the despair that had loomed just hours before. Finally, as their conversation wound down, Mia turned to him with a soft smile. "I'm so grateful for you. To have a life with you means everything to me," he said, his eyes sparkling with hope. As they left the park side by side, hand in hand, they both felt a sense of relief wash over them. They had weathered a storm, and while they were far from perfect, they could see the path ahead more clearly now. Their relationship wasn't just about navigating the big moments, it was about the everyday choices, the open lines of communication, and the willingness to learn and grow together. As they reached their apartment, everything felt different. They stepped inside, ready to transform not just the space but also their approach to life together. In that moment, Alex realized that real love isn't just about grand gestures. It's found in the delicate threads of understanding, cooperation, and daring to face the unknown together. And as they began this new chapter so filled with potential, they knew that no matter what came their way, they would face it as partners, equal in every sense of the word. They had turned a painful moment into a beautiful lesson, one that would shape them both for years to come. He stood in the small, sunlit office, the pen gliding smoothly across the lease agreement. The moment felt monumental, a major step toward a shared future. Alex glanced up often, excitement bubbling in his chest, imagining the life he and Emma could have in this charming little apartment. There would be warmth and laughter, late-night talks, and the quiet comfort of shared space. As the last stroke marked his name at the bottom of the document, a wave of satisfaction washed over him. He was ready to share the news, to let Emma in on the excitement of their new beginning. But when he walked out into the living room, he found her standing by the window, her expression unreadable. She asked, her tone sharp. "It's the lease," Alex replied, unable to hide his enthusiasm. Emma turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. "You signed it." The disbelief was palpable. His heart sank as confusion washed over him. "I thought you'd be happy," she shot back, her voice rising. The tension hung thick in the air, and he felt the atmosphere shift, darkening from excitement to dread. He said, desperation creeping into his voice, "Ready, this isn't just about you." Her eyes shimmered with hurt, and Alex felt sick. He protested, trying to grasp at any shred of justification. She cried, her voice thick with emotion. Her words pierced through him. Panic flooded his veins. He pleaded, stepping closer, trying to reach her in the whirlwind of feelings swirling around them. "Let's talk about this." But before he could grasp her hand, she turned abruptly, tears spilling down her cheeks as she dashed out the door. He shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. He bolted after her, a raw urge to stop her and mend the rift that had just split them apart. He raced outside into the late afternoon sun, the warm breeze brushing against his skin, but it felt cold compared to the chill in his heart. She was already quite a distance ahead, her silhouette becoming smaller as she headed toward the park where they had spent so many happy moments together. He called, panic rising with every step. But she didn't stop, her footsteps quickening as she fought back tears. She yelled back, her voice mingling with the rustle of leaves in the trees. The realization of what he had done crashed over him in waves. With every stride he took, shame twisted in his stomach. How had he let his excitement blind him to the importance of their partnership? As he reached the entrance of the park, he spotted her sitting on a bench, her head bowed in distress. Each sob echoed in the silence of the evening around them. He called softly, feeling the heat of regret burning deep inside him. When she looked up, the hurt in her eyes shattered him. She asked, her voice shaky, "You made your choice." "No," he denied, stepping closer, his heart racing. "I didn't mean to hurt you." She fired back, her frustration rising. "You didn't even think about how I felt." He felt the weight of her words hit him hard, and he opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. How could he explain the thrill that had consumed him? "I thought you'd be happy," he finally said, feeling defeated. "But you didn't listen to me," she replied, her voice cracking. "I wanted us to decide together." Regret wrapped around him like a vice. He staggered back, caught in the storm of emotions swirling between them. "Sorry, Emma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to feel like that." His heart felt like it might burst. "Let's get back to how it was," she asked, her face crumpling. "You made this decision without me. It's not just about the apartment." Seeing the tears streaming down her cheeks twisted something inside him. It struck him hard that this was not just a single moment of impulsiveness. This was a fracture in their relationship. He implored, stepping closer again. She said, her voice steady but filled with pain. As she turned away, Alex felt the world closing in on him. His heart raced as he reached out, wanting so desperately to bridge the gap that had opened between them. "Emma," he shouted, but she did. She moved with purpose, each step away from him feeling like a nail in the coffin of their relationship. He had to chase after her, forcing himself to catch up even if it hurt. "Please," he panted, "let's find a way to talk this through." He felt a mix of helplessness and desperation. He could sense the distance growing not just physically but emotionally. The park they had always loved now felt cold and unwelcoming, and he fought against the rising hopelessness consuming him. As they reached a secluded area under the trees, Emma finally stopped, the moonlight catching her features. She turned to face him, her expression a whirlwind of hurt and confusion. "This isn't about just signing a form, Alex," he asked, panic lacing his voice. "We can work through this, can you?" she challenged, her frustration bubbling to the surface. "You think signing a paper is enough, but you've ignored the bond we have." Regret clawed at his insides. The sound of her words resonated, echoing in the hollows of his chest. "I never meant to make you feel that way," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I just wanted to build a life with you, but I messed it up." Silence enveloped them, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but he could tell she was scared. Scared of being left behind, of making a commitment too quickly. "Listen, I know I can't just say sorry and make this okay," he continued, feeling overwhelmed. "I'll do everything I can to change." Tears pooled in her eyes, but she held his gaze, searching for sincerity. "What if you do it again?" Taking a breath, he swore he could feel the weight of the entire world in his chest. "I swear I'll never make a decision without you again. I'll involve you in everything." For the first time, he saw her vulnerability surface, and it struck a chord deep within him. "This is more than just about the apartment," she said, her voice trembling. "This is our future, please," he whispered, his heart racing. "Let's forge a new path together. We don't have to rush into decisions that affect us both. We can take our time and talk it out." He saw her contemplating, weighing his words against the pain that lingered. Finally, her expression softened ever so slightly. "Do you really mean it?" he replied with intensity. "Every time, without fail." There was a long pause where uncertainty hung in the air, but finally she gave a faint nod. "Okay, let's try to work through this." Relief washed over him as he took a step closer. "Thank you for giving me that chance." As they stood beneath the canopy of leaves, a sense of warmth began to fill the spaces between them. It wasn't just hope, it was determination. They were ready to navigate the waters of their relationship together. He asked, his voice calmer now. They spent the next hour turning their pain into a constructive dialogue, weaving a tapestry of shared hopes and dreams. The conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and collaboration as they discussed everything from paint colors to furniture arrangements. Their visions solidified a connection that had felt frayed just moments before. They were a team again, forging a future together, one where both of their voices mattered. And as the moon rose high above, casting a silver glow around them, Alex realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures, but also the little moments where they chose each other, day after day. In that park, as they shared their dreams, he felt a renewed sense of hope. They had transformed a moment of chaos into an opportunity for growth. Sometimes it takes a storm to strengthen the roots of a love, to remind them both that together they could weather anything. And when they finally left the park hand in hand, the air felt lighter, as if the universe conspired to help them mend the pieces of what had almost been broken. This was just the beginning of their journey, not a single lease signing but a lifelong commitment to choose each other every day, evolving together and building something beautiful from the ground up. The pen trembled slightly in his hand as Jake stared down at the newly signed lease. The moment felt surreal, electric with the promise of what was to come. He could hardly believe that this little piece of paper meant that he and Sarah would finally have a place to call their own a fresh start, away from all the chaos. He had imagined this moment vividly, but now that it was here, an uncomfortable knot twisted in his stomach. With a quick exhale, he folded the document and placed it in his backpack. He glanced out the window. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful, and he couldn't wait to share it with Sarah. He called, his voice echoing in the empty apartment. But there was a long pause. He felt a flicker of unease, as if the air had shifted. In the 2 years they had been together, Sarah had always been quick to join him when he was excited. As he stood there, the silence grew louder. Finally, she appeared in the doorway, her brow furrowed. She asked, her tone cautious. He exclaimed, unable to hide his enthusiasm. We got the apartment, but instead of joy blooming on her face, Sarah's expression darkened. The color seemed to drain from her cheeks. You signed it. The excitement in Jake's chest plummeted. I thought you would be thrilled. She shot back, her voice rising, the hurt evident in her eyes. I thought, he began, but the words stumbled over his tongue. He had thought this was what she wanted, that she would be as excited as he was. I thought it would be a nice surprise, she demanded, her voice shaking. You didn't consider how I feel about this. The room felt smaller as the weight of her words sank in, each syllable landing like a stone in his stomach. He searched for a response, a way to reassure her, but everything he thought of seemed to make it worse. I never meant to hurt you, Sarah, but she shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. You didn't just cause me pain. I'm sorry, he urged, stepping closer, desperate to make her understand. But before he could reach her, she turned abruptly and bolted out of the apartment, the door slamming behind her. Jake felt a wave of panic rise in him. No, his heart raced as he stumbled after her. He rushed outside, the world feeling sharp and disorienting. He scanned the street desperately, seeing her figure already disappearing down the sidewalk. Sarah, he called out, his voice cracking with urgency. But she only picked up pace, her silhouette growing smaller and smaller, enveloped by the dimming light. It was as if he were chasing after a dream, one that was slipping through his fingers. He felt desperation rising within him, the implications of his actions crashing down. What had started as a moment of excitement was rapidly turning into a nightmare. Jake sprinted after her, his feet pounding against the pavement. Anxiety clawed at him. Where was she going? Would she turn back? He could feel the weight of every moment they had shared pressing down on him. He shouted again, following her into the park where they had enjoyed countless dates and quiet evenings together. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the grass. There she was, a small figure in the distance, sitting on a bench with her head bowed. Her shoulders shook slightly and his heart twisted at the sight. Sarah, he said softly as he approached, anxiety coiling in his gut. As he drew nearer, he could see tears streaming down her cheeks. She said, her voice barely above a whisper, cracking with emotion. I thought this would be the best thing for us. I wanted a future with you, he pleaded, desperation spilling over. He wanted to reach out to touch her, to make her feel his sincerity, but he sensed her retreating. It's not just about the apartment. She cried, her words sharp, each one a dagger to his heart. I'm so sorry, he said, an ache blossoming in his chest. I did it because I thought it would make us happy. I didn't think it through, and I should have. Silence sat heavily between them, the air charged with pain and regret. He could see the flicker of conflict in her eyes. You're saying that now, but what happens when something else comes up? He exclaimed, his voice raw. I love you, I want to be with you, but I messed this one up. I'll listen from now on, but the hurt she felt was like a wall between them. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away, tears glimmering like tiny stars on her cheeks. Do you think I can just forget this? She asked, her voice trembling. Mia, please don't go, he begged. Nothing else mattered to him now but her. Talk about what? She stood abruptly, the bench creaking beneath her. Jake felt his heart racing, panic clutching at him. The fear of losing her screamed in his head. Please just give me a chance to fix this, he implored, stepping closer again. I'll do whatever it takes. She turned slightly away from him but paused, clearly torn. He could see that she wanted to believe him to restore some part of their relationship, but the pain was still too raw. Mia, he continued softly, I never wanted to make you feel this way. You mean everything to me. I don't know if I can trust you right now, she said, her voice wavering. What if you do it again? Taking a deep breath, he spoke from his heart. I understand that I have to earn your trust again. I promise to listen to you, really listen. I don't want this to be a failure. The silence swelled with their emotions, a fragile moment hanging between them. Jake could feel the energy shifting, but the pain was still there. He could see the tears pooling in her eyes as they stood together in the quiet evening light. He asked softly, taking her hands in his, hoping she could feel the earnestness in his grasp. Let's talk about what we both need. For a long moment, Sarah didn't respond, and dread pooled in his stomach. There was a flicker of vulnerability in her gaze, the tension that had been so tight between them starting to loosen just a bit. Starting over doesn't mean we'll instantly solve everything, she said softly, her voice steadying as she searched his eyes for sincerity. I know that, he replied, feeling a surge of determination, but I'm ready to fight for us. Let's not let this moment define our future. We can find a way forward. Sarah nodded slowly, and in that moment he felt like a weight had shifted. Okay, she said, her voice soft but firm. As the sun sank lower in the sky, they found a bench to sit on together. Jake felt a sense of hope rekindling as they began to discuss their thoughts, feelings, and fears openly, something they hadn't done for a while. Over time, they laid the groundwork of a renewed understanding, working through the complexities of their emotions, discussing what the future could hold. But as their conversation unfolded, Jake caught a glimmer of something in Sarah's eyes, an uncertainty that lingered, a flicker of doubt. And then, without warning, she stood up again, her expression shifting to one of deep concern. He asked, confused. She said, her voice trembling. Jake's heart sank. Was she suggesting that their relationship wasn't ready for this next step? She paused for a moment, glancing away. Are we just going to ignore how much we've been through? He could see the fear lurking in her eyes, swirling with the tension of their earlier argument. We're going to do this together, he said quickly, hoping to reassure her. But we can take our time, we don't have to move in immediately. Their eyes locked for a moment as if the universe was challenging them, laying bare all the uncertainties they faced. And as the last hues of daylight faded into darkness, Jake knew they were standing on a precipice between risk and safety. Their next words could change everything, deciding the course of their relationship either toward healing or heartbreak. Sarah finally said, her voice soft but measured. Of course, he replied earnestly, desperation battling hope in his heart. They both hesitated, and in that moment, Jake felt the world shift beneath them, again promising yet terrifying. As they sat together, the night wrapped around them like a cloak, thick with possibility. But he could see the shadows in Sarah's expression that hinted at deeper fears, and he knew this conversation was only the beginning. Could they truly navigate the storm together, or was this just the calm before a bigger upheaval? The answers hung in the air, electricity crackling, ready to ignite, leaving them both at the edge of something monumental.